made on the Frydenberg Liberal speech talking about the budget. As is customary, the Labour Party also make a counter budget, a budget in reply, what they would do if they were in charge of the country at the moment. And I want to go through Anthony Albanese's vision for what he would have done were he the Prime Minister at the moment. First thing I have to say, let's go over to his website here. So Albanese's website is trash. Like, I don't know when this was designed. I don't know if they paid someone or like a bunch of volunteers did it, but like, it's got this weird thing. So Grainler News, which is his like electorate, Parliament News. Now, it's hard to tell because when I hover over each of it, it like underlines, so it makes it look like it's two distinct sections here, and that all of this stuff is one other thing, right? But no, this is Parliament News going down here, as you can see, much more active. And then we have just the stuff relevant to Grainler. Like, it's just a very strange layout. Got an RSS feed of it, like his Twitter, tweets by Elbow MP. I don't know, just a very like weird, like, what is this? His Instagram? Does he not use it, or it's hard to say. And then, all right. So anyway, let's get that out of the way. Just a poorly designed website. Let's compare that with Josh Frydenberg's. I think I spelled it right. Ends with ERG. There we go. Like, come on, man. This is way sleeker. Oh, you want to know about Josh Kuyong? What do you want to know? Select it from here. What do you want to know? I don't know. Weird drop downs are happening, and like on some but not others. I don't know. Just looks weird. Anyway, let's go ahead. We'll get into the meat and potatoes here. The budget in reply 2020. I have seen the video version of this that he presented in Parliament. It goes for like 35 minutes, so I'm not going to go through it today. You know, fairly like spacey. I'll be able to get through it. It'll be fine. So again, we've got this thing here, check against delivery. I don't know if that's relevant to anything. I don't know what exactly that is. Okay. Whoa. Onto the speech. My fellow Australians, we live in a great country. Thanks, Anthony. Amidst all the chaos and hardship, blah, blah, blah. There's nowhere else you'd rather be. He clearly hasn't been in Melbourne recently. The credit for that, as always, doesn't belong to the politicians here. It belongs to you, the people of Australia. Like, this is so corny, bro. Oh, this is so corny. So if all of this, if the reason, let's say, that the coronavirus stuff has gone well isn't because of the politicians, then why is it? Like, why have we left it to them? It's just so bizarre. Your hard work and sacrifices that were imposed upon us, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Australian values, classic like catch cries for nothing. What does that even mean? That we look after each other? Is that the Australian value? Is that an exclusively Australian value? Can other countries hold that value? Hard to see what he means here, but I understand where he's coming from this stuff, because it's all just like drivel that he has to kind of say. Yeah, because it looks worse if he doesn't say it, right? That makes it look much worse. It's in the spirit of looking after each other. Those values. It says one value. Just that we should define what happens next, blah, 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 blah. All right. The economy was already struggling. Reasons you can look into, flat wages and blah, blah, blah. So the economy was already struggling pre-COVID. If you are over 35, you are certainly being left behind. I assume they're referring to the... What do they call it this time? Job hirer? Is it actually called job hirer? No. Like job maker? Yeah. So I assume here, let's close these ones. So I assume here he's talking about the job maker hiring credit, which is a great little... Slips right off the tongue, that one. You basically, the government subsidises $200 a week of a wage. They subsidise a portion of your wage if you're under 35. I guess his argument there is that if you're over 35, you're less likely to get a job. Probably true. although on a subsidy of only what, $100 a week, like if two even candidates went for the same job role, probably the one that costs $100 per week less to hire would get the job. Like if you're 35, right? There shouldn't be any reason you're less skilled than like a 23-year-old. So if you're going for the same job position as someone much younger than yourself, but then why would you be going for the same jobs as a 23-year-old? Interesting. Look, I see what he's getting at. I'm not sure I entirely agree with it. I can see what he's getting at though. This week your wage subsidy was cut. In March it disappears in theory. If by March we still need the job subsidy, I would have thought that things, like we have bigger issues. Unemployment, blah, blah, blah. Quadruple whammy. Nice one. Interesting phrasing by the Labour Party. I did notice this somewhere else as well. Maybe in the United States they're calling it the Trump recession. The idea of the Morrison recession is like, it's very shallow. It's very... So had the Morrison government done nothing at all, left the country open, would we still be in recession? Probably. I mean, we can look Sweden GDP growth. So Sweden's Sweden is at the moment the poster child of people who think you should have left your economy open. Right? Let's see. We're of course assuming that all these stats are real. But even Sweden, who stayed open, okay, still dropped their economy by 8.5%. So I really don't think it's actually fair to be calling this the Morrison recession. I understand it as a point of rhetoric, as a framing thing, but it's probably not actually fair to be calling it the Morrison recession. Anthony Albanese loves to talk about his mother, the single mother, and he grew up, I'm sure he says it here somewhere, that he grew up in public housing. Bang, there we go. I'm not sure I've ever heard of an Anthony Albanese speech where he hasn't talked about his mother and the fact that he grew up in public housing. Let's see if we can find one, like, completely unrelated. Anthony Albanese speech, let's say builders, public housing. That might be a harder one because it might come up with public housing. No, that's the link I'm looking at now. Anyway, you get the point I'm making. He brings it up a lot. Again, a good rhetorical trick because it makes you more in line with the common man. I actually don't know much about Anthony Albanese's career before he was a part of the Labour Party. I'm sure if we looked it up, Anthony Albanese, he's probably some union guy. Again, their support or something. I don't know. Was he a part of the union? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, he did an economics degree and he went straight into the Labour Party, it seems. Election to replace him. Blah, blah, blah. So it seems like he left university, went straight into the Labour Party apparatus, and then there we go from here. So I don't know that he's actually ever done anything outside of politics in his kind of professional career. Anyway, that actually makes it an even more interesting rhetorical point because he hasn't actually done anything else. This is his only claim to being really in line with the common person's lived experience. Anyway, we'll continue on. Press forward. I love this part. Frydenberg did the same thing. 2020, what a year. Bushfires, healthcare. Anthony went for the supermarket workers. I did comment at the time. I was surprised that Josh didn't mention the supermarket stackers. Don't worry, guys. Albo's got you there. The truckies working around the clock. So they each went for their thing. I think Frydenberg brought up the bushfire fighters. I think he brought up the firefighters and the healthcare workers. But then Albanese goes for the cleaners, the supermarket workers, the truckies, the teachers, the farmers, small businesses. He goes for everyone, trade unions, public servants, Australians in general, rallying together. Okay, so we've got 1 million unemployed, more $1 trillion of debt. It's like, and I made the same comment again with the Frydenberg speech. It's a bit disingenuous to claim that, like, how do I want to phrase this? So during the Labor years, the coalition was constantly going on about Labor's debt. And because they're hypocrites, they've now accrued, 4 times that which the coalition inherited, right? But I'm certain of it. I don't know off the top of my head, but there must be things that the Labor Party left in the budget. I've heard them referred to before as like time bombs and things like that, where they back-end spending so that after an election it looks blah, blah, blah. It blows out the budget numbers, right? We saw the same thing with the low and middle income tax offset, where like the Liberal Party has basically dated this legislation to end in an election year, 2021-22, election year Australia. I think it's 2022 it will be. That's like the least useful thing. How did I end up in the exact same place as I did last time? Just tell me when the election is. Like, it's a 2019 federal election, so it's an election in 2022. Basically, the Liberal Party have set up this legislation, which is like a $255 to $1,000 tax offset to expire in the year that they could, in theory, lose office. And then it would, of course, be incumbent on the Labor Party to renew or disallow that legislation. I'm sure the Labor Party did similar things. So for them to come out and really get on the debt bandwagon as well, it's a bit yikes, bro. It's a bit yikes, bro. I understand the claims they're making, like $1 trillion is an absurd amount of money. The Liberals were going on about it for so long, the debt, and it's now way bigger. Even they would say it's because, All right, let's move on. The damning silences. So these are the people left out of the budget. Insecure workers. Women. Family budgets pushed to breaking point by the cost of childcare. So, I don't know, maybe this is because I've been in Melbourne for most of this. I get the sense most childcare places were closed. I don't know if that's true. It's probably true more generally. How much does childcare cost in Melbourne? It's probably true more generally that childcare is expensive as hell. But is that like a direct thing due to coronavirus? $70 to $185 per day. Yikes. Let's get the calculator going. So let's just hypothesize here. Let's make up a scenario. So you're a single mother. You want to work 5 times per week. And there's, of course, 52 weeks in a year. $18,000 just on childcare, that's the low end. Holy shit. Holy shit. So if you're on like a normal income, 50-ish thousand, you're, yikes. That's a massive percentage of your income. I do recall, to take it on an anecdotal story here, I do recall my parents telling me that when I was born, they did consider going through the childcare route, but that after my mum went back to work, her difference in income would be so minuscule that it wasn't even worth doing. It wasn't worth putting in the effort to make such little income after childcare costs. Older Australians get the double mention, bang bang. Care economy workforce in childcare that is overworked and underpaid. Like, they're really saying. So to summarize what Albanese is going on about here, he's mentioning every group that he feels like is left out of the budget. Any of these guys probably on the list that shouldn't be? Doubtful. Like, if you were going to talk about people that were left out of the budget, you would certainly talk about insecure work. That would absolutely be number one. I mean, the government at the same time as insecure work is the reason why we're having a lot of the economic problems that we're having now. Also in Victoria as well, it's a big spreader of the virus is insecure work. But I don't think there was anything in the budget regarding insecure work whatsoever. If anything, the government's incentivizing it the other way. They're talking about the need to like cut red tape and reduce workplace securities and things like that. Women also on the list for obvious reasons. Again, I think women suffered the most under the coronavirus shutdowns. Coronavirus shutdown women percentage. I love these days how vague you can be with Google. Let's see. March. Let's look for something more recent if we can. August. Econofact.org. Very reputable. Econofun? Econofact. Oh, I don't know. This is all irrelevant stuff. Anyway, I saw a graph the other day. It was very pretty. It explained that women have lost their jobs more than men. Older Australians, of course, pandemic smashed them. Too many Australians who built this country are being treated without the respect and dignity they deserve. Lonely prisoners of a broken aged care system. So, what he's setting you up for, you would think, right? I have seen the video. Not too much of it stuck with me. To be honest, I find Albanese a terribly uninspiring politician. But if we did look at what we'd expect of his budget moving forward, we'd think that there's going to be some change. Have I scrolled up past it? There would be some change to workplace arrangements. You would have to be, right? If you're that worried about insecure work and how the budget said nothing about it, you would have to include something about that. The inclusion of women in the economy, you would have to include something about that, and childcare. You'd also you'd be talking about like really restructuring the way aged care is done in Australia, I would have thought. Facilities run for the highest profits at the lowest standards. Everyone is overworked there, blah, blah, blah. So you would think they're going to hit aged care, childcare, women, and insecure work. 4 things off the top of my head. Throughout this crisis, my colleagues and I have been constructive as opposed to obstructive. Won't name any names on that one. Telehealth, mental support. The only legacy delivered by this budget is $1 trillion debt, a reform desert. Now that's a big claim. That's a bit of a slap in the face. If we look back and think about the things that Frydenberg was talking about in his budget, there was of course what did we decide it's called? Job Maker Hiring Credit was the main one. I'd actually be stumped to even think what were the main takeaways from the budget 2020. Federal budget 2020. Oh, what's going on there? Don't have a number lock on. That'll do it. Here we go. Yahoo Finance. So weird that Yahoo is still a website as well. What a picture. Here's what we know about the 2021 federal budget so far. Guess what, guys? Frydenberg will be involved. There'll be dollar bills, and ScoMo will be there looking unimpressed. Nice. Thank you for that one, Anastasia. Tax cuts, that's right. Tax bracket changes. There was an instant asset write-off. I think trainee workers are going to get paid, infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. So there was a lot of stuff, right? Was it like massive reforms to the way that we operate? No, it wasn't. So it's probably fair that it was a reform desert. I don't know, though, that the only legacy of this budget was $1 trillion debt. First off, the $1 trillion debt's not even in this budget. It's actually for the next one. It's a projection. And second, doing things like hiring young people. Here we go. Where is it? Oh, they don't even have the job maker credit. Job maker hiring credit, goddammit, listed on here, which is interesting. But I think if you're setting up an incentive to hire young people at the expense of old people or older people, let's say, I think that actually will leave a fairly lasting legacy on the Australian economy. I mean, it's difficult for me to imagine how 50s and 60-year-olds are going to reintegrate into the economy after this. I don't think there was anything for them. I think that's fair. But I think that will be a legacy of the budget. I don't think it's fair to say that only the $1 trillion would be involved, will be what it's remembered for anyway. The decisions in this budget, excuse me, the decisions in this budget should be about setting Australia on a course for the next decade and beyond. Maybe. Again, it's hard for me to say. I'm in Melbourne, right in the middle of it at the moment. And so it's hard for me to say what it's like in the rest of the country. Right now, I would be like creating a budget to just get us through this. Like, that would be my main thing, is just let's just get by for now. And we'll think about big structural reforms like as we're coming out of it. That's where I would be going with it. But again, I have a very different lens, maybe. Look at the NBN Classic. I'm not even going to bother with this one. It's just Labor gets the W, all right? NBN, Lib versus Labor. Labor came out on top on that one. Now, I love this because it's so obviously like put to focus group. Rehire our workers. Rewire our economy. Recharge workforce participation of women and rebuild the nation. Whoa. We got the 4 R's, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 R's. Like, so expect to see these as the 3-word slogans of the Labor Party coming into the next election. I know that this one's technically 5, but you can think about it as three words. Recharge, workforce, women. Okay? Rewire our economy, rehire our workers, rebuild our nation. Nice one, guys. Our schools, TAFEs, and vocational education and universities are vital national institutions, making sure a quality education is accessible and affordable. Doesn't just open the doors for individuals, it makes the whole country better. Sweet. So you would also, I'm tipping, expect to see something in there about the TAFEs. It's interesting, actually. So having, in the same week, I believe, that the Labor Party lost the vote on the higher education reforms, that they are talking about schools, TAFE, and universities as like important national institutions on the same week that they actually just got massively reformed in a way that Labor did not want to do. So, childcare. I don't know if he just announced this in the speech or... So, childcare needs to happen. Here's a bunch of reasons why. Good. Let's do childcare. Supporting families. It's underlined, but it doesn't go anywhere. Instead of childcare supporting families where both parents want to work, the costs and the tax system actively discourage this. It's working mums who cop the worst of it. True. For millions of working women, it's not worth working more than 3 days a week. That's right. So my understanding now at the moment is there's a cap on the subsidies the government pays. It works out to like $10,000. I think it's $10,800. Childcare subsidy cap. I think it's like $10,800. $10,600, close enough. Which in essence is like 3 days. 3 days of childcare. Wait, what? Families earning over 190,000 and under 300,000. Weird. Anyway. It derails careers, does provide working women. Yes, it does. And if I'm the Prime Minister, I'm going to fix this. Cool. So the reason this is a problem is that, first off, it takes women who want to work out of the workforce. It makes it harder to like balance the work-life stuff, which, drags women out of the workforce. It also creates a system where men don't feel like they can stay at home and be stay-at-home parents or take a more active role in their children's lives, because now they have to earn an income. Because it's not, it's not that it's not possible, but it's actively discouraged, according to Anthony Albanese, by the cost and tax system of childcare. It's very difficult for men to then give up their salary or move on to a part-time position when financially it doesn't work. So it's a problem for both men and women. I understand completely why he went for the women's route here. It's just that I did some research specifically on this stuff about the effects it had on men, so that's at the front of my mind. So the Labor government will, from the 1st of July 2022, so that's right, 2022 is the election year, we figured it out, remove the annual cap on the childcare subsidy. So that's this amount here. So the government will subsidise a theoretically unlimited amount of childcare, and we will increase the maximum childcare subsidy to 90%. So I did a little bit of research on this one. Current childcare subsidy rates. So my understanding is that currently the childcare subsidy cap, this 90% figure that Albanese is talking about, I think it's actually already 85%. It doesn't have below this amount. So if you're low income, I think it's up to, yep, there we go, 85%. More than 69,000 and below 174. So probably most people are going to fall within this bracket here, assuming you're a couple. If you're a single parent, you're almost certainly in this bracket. And if you're a couple, you're probably in this bracket. So between 50 to 85%, let's pick a nice even number there. We'll say 50. The average person has half of their childcare subsidised already, up to $10,560 per year. Right? So he wants to increase that to 90%. Now, he doesn't go into here, I don't think. Perhaps he goes into more detail about it somewhere else. He doesn't go into here how that 90% will filter into these percentages here. Is he implying that everyone should have a 90% cap? So if you're earning over 300,000, you should still receive a subsidized childcare up to 90% for an unlimited amount? I don't know. If he's talking about taxpayer dollars spent flows directly through to savings for Australian families, yeah, I don't know. Blah, blah, blah. The principle is very simple. Early childhood education is important. Childcare is essential for families and for the economy. And so they do want to move to a 90% subsidy for childcare for every Australian family. Wow. Like, that's a tough sell for me, to be honest. That's a tough sell for me, to be honest. Let's get the calculator up again. Let's see if we can nut this out very quickly. So let's go on the low end again. We'll say $70 per hour times 8 hours per day comes out at $560 a day? No. The hourly, no. It's $70 per day, which makes times 5 makes $350 in a week. We times that by 52, we end up at our yearly cost of $18,200, right? That's where we're at before. Let's say that 50% of that is subsidized. So, yeah, and then you have to figure out the caps and stuff as well. Jeez, man. This is complicated stuff. So let's say that 90% of this is subsidized. So you go 0.9 times 0.9. So for families earning literally $1 billion a year, the government's going to subsidize their childcare costs by $16,000. Like, come on. Oh, look. I'm all for universality because I want everyone to have access to these things. So things like Medicare, right? NDIS, superannuation. They should be universal in the sense that everyone should have access to them. That does not mean, however, that they should not be means tested. So if you're wealthy and you have your superannuation in like just some for-profit fund, you're a fool. If you're wealthy and you're taking part in like the Medicare system, you're a fool. You can afford better private health insurance. You can afford to go to the private hospitals, and you're probably not worried about getting your Medicare rebates and things like that. So how does Anthony Albanese justify? Let's see if I can get that graph up again. Don't have it. Doesn't matter. How can Anthony Albanese justify subsidizing 90% of the cost of childcare for literal millionaires? That's absolutely crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. Okay. A future made in Australia. So he's going to be talking about manufacturing here. Job creation, training and skills, energy prices, infrastructure, government purchasing, manufacturing and construction. The global pandemic has exposed the terrible damage 7 years of Liberal government has done to Australian manufacturing. To be the last link, blah, 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 blah. All right. blah, 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 blah. Jobs and Skills Australia. Like, that's it. So, usually, right, a future made in Australia. Let's manufacture some shit. And your first, like, here's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to start Jobs and Skills Australia. The most boring, bureaucratic fucking... What's the energy there? What's the excitement to get behind about that? Here we go. Are we almost here? We have a shortage of all these people. There's 140,000 doing less, blah, 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 blah. But what are you going to do? What's your, like, thing that I can get behind here, Albanese? Where is it? There is more the government can do and should do. What do you suggest? Australian Skills Guarantee. So, in the same ballpark as here, 1 out of every 10 workers employed will be an apprentice. So that's... I did recall this from the video that I watched of his speech. And I do recall him saying this, and my immediate thought was, holy crap, like, that's a really good way to actually train workers. But at the same time, I feel like if you were a, like, contractor, surely you're already incentivized to have the appropriate number of trainees working on any site. Like, why is that number 1 out of 10 need to be trainees when maybe 1 out of 31 is actually, like, the reasonable amount? I don't know. It's the sort of thing that probably should be left to companies to train apprentices. But if you're going to incentivize them to do that, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. But still, we're talking about all of this stuff. These 6 things here: job creation, training skills, lower energy prices. I'm not seeing any of it so far. So far, what we have is Jobs and Skills Australia, which I don't even know what that is. Yeah, I don't even know what that is. I think if it's based off of Infrastructure Australia, I think it's going to... I think what it's going to do is generate advice for the government that would be it would just be ignored. It would just be ignored if he wants to follow the Infrastructure Australia model. So far, all we really have of these 6 points is training and skills. That's what we've got so far. Because this doesn't create more workers. It does improve their skill set. So we're going to do some more stuff with this later on. Concrete rules to maximize local content and create local jobs at best, blah, 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 blah. Like, what's going on here? Australia will implement concrete rules. Like what? Like what? Doesn't seem to go any. It doesn't seem to go any. It doesn't seem to go into any detail about much of any of this, really. So it's like they're making announcements that they'll make policy announcements later on, probably closer to the election. The classic zinger, Liberal government's defence minister said he wouldn't trust Australians to build a canoe. That's why we should build submarines off in France or something like that. Look, most of this stuff is jargon you can pretty much ignore. Liberal governments have consistently said we can't build trains here. They said the same, we can't build cars here. Blah, 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 blah. So they will create a national rail manufacturing plan and I guess incentivize the states to purchase their commuter trains in Australia. Yep, public transport and freight. Seems fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with anything that he's saying here. But look, we've got a good chunk of content here, right? A good chunk of content here. And all he's actually said is that we're going to look at Jobs and Skills Australia similar to Infrastructure Australia. We're going to implement an Australian skills guarantee. The Liberals shouldn't have got rid of the car industry. And we're going to do a national rail plan. Like, there's really nothing of substance in that. All right, we move on to powering the nation. So we're going to be assuming here if it's kickstarting the next generation of Australian manufacturing jobs. I guess they're going to come about because of this stuff, but doesn't look like it. Will deliver the affordable, reliable energy to power industry into the future. Liberals have had 22 energy policies in 8 years. I wonder where they got that from. Not hard to believe. I just wonder where they got that number from. Australians could do so much better, blah, 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 blah. Labor has a clear target to tackle climate change, net zero carbon pollution by 2050. I feel like every state and territory government, Labor and Liberals, supports this goal. Victoria, net carbon neutral goal. I feel like 2050 is not actually anything like... Oh yeah? Vic government set 2050. Say New South Wales. 2050. Okay. Maybe he's actually right. I would have thought that most states would have been pushing either for 2030 or not have one at all. Aspirational target of net zero by 2050. How are you going to get 26 to 28% less by 2030 and then zero by 2050? Like, it seems impossible. All right, I'm not going to spend too long on that. I'll have to take Albanese's word that the states all actually agree on a 2050 policy. These guys all agree on it. National Farmers Federation. I have heard of them before. I think they're like a lobby group for farmers. Net zero carbon. Dang. They really are all calling for it. That's so bizarre. Qantas back at everyone except for the Morrison government. So what is the Australian government net neutral carbon policy? Well, I mean, everyone else here I have found easily. And the only one I can't find is the Australian government's net neutral carbon 2050. Let's look up and see what comes up. Wait. Federal says it is committed to net zero emissions in the second half of the century. So I guess like after 2050 is what we're going to be talking about here. All right, solar panels are good. Yes, Labor government will make more of them. We're going to Yes, I love that they're incorporating their 3-word slogans into corporations that will be maintaining and building the future of Australia. Absolutely love that. Rewiring the Nation Corporation. Fantastic. Let's borrow at low interest rates, blah, blah, blah. Rebuild the grid. I don't know what that means. Australian Energy Market Operators Integrated System Plan. That's probably a good thing. $40 billion in benefits sounds good. Australian Energy Market Operators Integrated System Plan. I think it's making it easier for solar to join the grid or something. I don't know. I don't know what this is. It's good that we're doing it, let's say. Housing. Build more. We're back. We're back. Alright, where were we at? We need jobs, yes. We need more economic growth as well. Tradies back on tools, nice. Make it happen. Social housing is, I know, a big Labour Party political point at the moment. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's a good thing. I don't really know what like social housing is versus public housing. It's right because he talks about earlier on that he grew up in public housing. See, he talks about public housing. Says it a few times. I know, just the one. But then makes reference here to social housing. I don't know if they're different or not. Yeah, not sure. If these were MPs' offices, they'd be fixed overnight. It's the sort of thing that, like, and I know everyone always does it, but like I heard the Nationals on the radio the other day talking about how these properties that were damaged by the bushfires, if they were on the banks of the Yarra, they'd be fixed overnight. And look, they're probably not wrong. To be fair, they're probably not wrong. Tradies could be ordering today, make it happen, more stuff. Yeah, see, 200,000 Australians are on waiting list for social housing. I grew up in public housing. What's the difference between those? Like, I assume they actually are interchangeable words. I don't think... Okay. Public housing is owned and managed by the state government. Community housing is managed and possibly owned by not-for-profit organisations. Together, public and community housing is known as social housing. Huh? Okay. I'm even more confused than I was before. It's fine. Make more. Make more of them. It's good. Australian Centre for Disease Control. I don't fully get this thing right. He's saying we need a CDC, Centre for Disease Control. We're apparently the only country in the OECD that doesn't have one. I think he says that somewhere as well. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but I don't really know what they do. So, like, I know that if you're in America at the moment, your go-to source for COVID information is the CDC. Looks like they're doing other stuff about smoking, just like general medical stuff. Like, I don't know really what they do. Remember the Back in Black mugs? I sure do. I actually had a friend of mine who he really wanted to buy some. They were like $30. We managed to find them, even though they're not on the Liberal Party merch store anymore. But anyway, we didn't go ahead on him. Look, and then he's just trashing the government for a bit. Oh, this stuff isn't very good. I spoke to someone out in somewhere, and the Prime Minister should remember her. She was the young pregnant woman. I'm not laughing at that. I'm not laughing at the fact that she's a young pregnant woman. I'm laughing at the fact that this is the woman that Scott Morrison made shake her hand, or shake his hand rather. And then look, the rest of this is just like, who do you want to be? I want to believe in the better future. The going gets tough, the government's on your side. Nice. Although he does slip in here, this really comes out of nowhere. Recognises First Nations people in our constitution and gives them a voice to this parliament. So he's in favour of both constitutional recognition and like a separate body of a voice to parliament, like an advisory voice, or I don't know. Conclusion. In conclusion, the year 2020 has been the year from hell. Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. The 4 key points. Power and recover with clean energy. Rebuild manufacturing. Make quality childcare a right for all, not a luxury for some. Like, wouldn't it be cheaper to do that if you said, like, if you capped it? I just don't get that. And we're going to create jobs for today and train people for tomorrow. Look, that'll do on Anthony Albanese. I've had about enough of him today. Thank you very much for watching that. I hope you got as much out of it as I did, and I will see you next time.